Hi, I'm Rob from MicksGarage. In the UK and Ireland, our cars have to undergo a roadworthiness test. In the UK it's the MOT and in Ireland it's the NCT. Today we're going to talk about some of the most common reasons that the cars fail these tests, and we're going to try and give you some tips and tricks to try and pass the test the first time. The majority of what we're going to talk about are just simple checks that you can do yourself that won't cost you any money and don't need you to bring the car to the mechanic. So let's get straight into it. The number one reason for failure at the moment is front suspension. What we're going to look for here on the suspension is physical signs of damage or any leaking from the shock absorbers. So what you can do is turn the wheels of the car fully over to one side, which gives you a bit of access here to look in at the suspension and to see if you can see anything amiss at all. All we're doing here is looking at the shock absorber and the spring, looking for any obvious signs of damage, or in particular any oil leaking from the shock absorbers, because that's an instant fail. Now while you're down here looking at the suspension, it's a good idea to check your rubber brake hoses here. These are a really common cause for failure, and what we're looking for here is perished rubber. Any signs of brake fluid leaking or weeping or anything like that would be an instant fail as well. Now let's move on to your car's tyres, another very common failure point. First thing you can check yourself is the tread depth. All tyres, pretty much as far as I'm aware, have tread depth indicators. You can just see them here. Now the minimum tread depth allowed is 1.6 millimeters, and that is the height of these indicators. So when your tyre's tread is parallel with those indicators, you know that you've reached the minimum tread depth allowed, and you need to change the tyres. Another thing you have to check is the tyre's aspect ratio. What that means is that the tyres on the same axle, i.e. the front or the rear, need to be the same as each other. So the left front tyre needs to be the same as the right front tyre in size. This is 205 55 R16. That means it's 205 wide, 55 high, 16 in diameter. You need to have the same dimensions on the tyre on the other side of the car. One of the most important things to check with your tyres is that they carry an E-mark. If they don't carry this E-mark, they won't pass the test. Another thing to check is the type of tyre, radial or cross-ply. This one's a radial. Again, like the aspect ratio, you can only have the same type of tyre on the same axle. So the front axle must have either radial or cross-ply, not a mix of both. You can have radials on the front, cross-plies on the back, or vice versa. The overall condition of your tyre will be checked, so make sure there are no rips or tears or cuts. You can't have a repair to the sidewall of the tyre, or a plug as sometimes they're called. The tyres need to be at the correct pressure, so if you don't know what that is, it'll be in your owner's manual. Sometimes it also lists the tyre pressures inside the fuel filler cap as well. Some tyres are directional. They will have an arrow on the sidewall of the tyre. Make sure that that arrow is pointing in the right direction. Now we'll move on to the car's lights. The lighting is one of the most common reasons that a car will fail the NCT or MOT. Headlight alignment being probably the number one cause. Not a lot we can do to check that at home. You can bring that to your garage, and it's a very simple and fairly cheap job that they can do for you. What we can do is we can check the condition of all the lights, make sure that none of the lenses are cracked, damaged, and we can also check that all the bulbs in the lights are working. Now the best way to do that is to get somebody to sit into the car and turn on the lights one by one while you check that they're all operational. So first you start with the side lights, then the headlights, then main beam, then the indicators left and right, then the hazard lights. Check the front fog lights if you have them. This car doesn't. Then you can move to the back of the car, check the tail lights again, check the brake lights, and check the reversing lights. Also check the rear fog lights if your car has them. Now moving on, another surprisingly common reason for a car to fail its test is that the driver's view of the road is obscured. This can be because of cracks or chips to the windscreen, or it could even be something as simple as wiper blades not working properly or being worn out. There's a couple of things you can do to check the function of your blades, your wiper blades. Firstly, check that there's not too much play in the wiper arm. That's something that is done in the test. Then check the blade itself, check the rubber, the surface that wipes the screen, make sure there's no damage on there that you can see, and then get into the car, put on the wipers and the washer jets and make sure that the wipers clear the screen properly, as that's exactly what the tester is going to do. While you're inside the car checking the wipers, turn on the ignition, look at the dashboard and look for your ABS light and your airbag lights. These need to both come on and then go off again, otherwise that will constitute a fail. Your car's registration plates or number plates is another surprisingly common reason for a car to fail its test. Basically they have to be of the standard variety, nothing fancy is allowed, no fancy lettering, no unusual backgrounds, no extra symbols. In Ireland they have to be white reflective plates with black lettering, front and back. In the UK they're white on the front and yellow on the back. In Ireland you have to have the Euro symbol with the country letters here, and you also have to have the county name in Irish. One of the most common areas for test failure is brakes and the braking system, which is understandable because brakes are a safety critical component of the car. Now most of the test is carried out on specialist equipment which measures brake performance and checks for a balance between left and right and front and back, but there's a few things that we can check here ourselves. We can check the brake pedal itself, we can check it for play and travel and feel, and if the brake pedal is comes with a pedal rubber or friction surface, it needs to be in good condition or not missing. You can do a very basic visual check on your brake discs and pads by looking in at the discs and pads through the holes in your wheels. You should be able to see the condition of the discs and how much friction material is left on the brake pads. Another thing we can check is the handbrake function. The handbrake works on a ratcheting system and that needs to work in order to pass the test. So you'll hear the ratchet clicking when you pull the handbrake up. And the main function of the handbrake, of course, is that it needs to stop the car rolling. Now we're going to test the function of the handbrake, so we're going to roll back on this hill, pull the handbrake on, and hopefully the handbrake will hold us. So we'll stop using the foot brake, pull up the handbrake, let off the foot brake, and the handbrake's holding us. If your car starts to roll back, then your handbrake is probably going to need adjusting. Now we've looked at some of the more common reasons for test failure. Now let's try and look at some of the tips that will hopefully get you to pass the test first time. Number one, take the junk out of your trunk. The tester needs access to the spare wheel of your car, so make sure he can get to it. Tip number two relates to seat belts. If the tester can't find the seat belts, if they're tucked away down the bottom of the seat, they can fail you on that. So clip the belt into its receiver in all three positions, in the back and in the front. Tip number three, child seats. If you leave the car seats in the car when you bring it to the test centre, then they'll be tested as well. If you don't want that extra risk, you can just take them out. Tip number four, general appearance and tidiness. If you present your car to the tester and it's in a state, it's messy, there's sweet wrappers and crisp packets inside, the tester's going to think, well, how well is the rest of this car being maintained? So make a bit of an effort, tidy it up, tidy all your CDs and bits and pieces away, personal belongings, put them in the glove box, and generally give it a bit of a clean up. Tip number five, hubcaps, centre caps or wheel trims, whatever you want to call them, the tester needs access to the wheel nuts and wheel studs, so make sure that you take them off before you bring the car to the centre. Our sixth and final tip is oil and water. To make sure that your car's engine is protected while it's being tested, it's a good idea to check the fluid levels in the engine bay. So check your oil, make sure that it's properly topped up. Check the car's coolant to make sure that that's at the correct level, and also fill up the washer bottles, because the tester will use the wipers, probably will want to use the washer jets as well. So that concludes our feature on the MOT and NCT car test. It's by no means exhaustive, but we hope we covered some of the main points. We also hope that you found some of the tips useful or informative. Thank you very much for watching.